Hey, history fans, welcome back to World History by a Jew. I'm your lecturer, Seth Fleishman, and we are back with our Samson mini-series. Although this one isn't so much about Samson, we're covering the sea people, specifically the Denyen, or as we equated with last time, the Danunim. And I've entitled this one Sea People Island, and you'll see why very soon. Now, in our last lecture, we looked at several archaeological finds in the eastern part of Anatolia, the eastern part of Turkey, and we were able to come to a couple core conclusions, and I'm going to take us back up to that point. So if you want to know more, you'll have to go back and watch the last lecture, but I think I can give you enough in 2 minutes or so to get you ready to enjoy tonight's lecture. So first of all, what did we learn in our last lecture? Around the Bronze Age collapse, southeastern Anatolia was home to the Danunim people. They were in the land of Adana, and we picked out several archaeological finds that showed that this was in fact Adana, that the people were known as the Danunim. All right, and the rulers of the Danunim, the kings, claimed descent from a Greek mythological hero named Mopsus. Now, that means Mopsus was no longer a mythological hero. Instead, he's now a real person, a real individual, and the kings are claiming descent from this once thought to be mythological individual named Mopsus. And it's important that you have that Greek connection, of course, because when you're talking about the sea people, and we looked at how the Egyptians viewed these Denyen, these Danunim, and having that Greek connection was critical to our analysis. So let's get to the Egyptians. The Egyptians gave us these people who etymologically match the Denyen. They're one of Egypt's sea people. Okay, so Denyen, when we went through the list, but the Denyen are one of the 9 named sea people. This entire body of evidence from our last lecture put us in the right location. We know they had to be somewhere in the Mediterranean, somewhere north of Egypt, based on the descriptions. We know that they have to have a Greek connection because in the pictures of them that the Egyptians left us, we see they have the same type of look of the Philistines. They have this clear Aegean type connection, and we'll get back to that a little bit tonight as well. But there was a problem, and the problem I left everyone with in the last lecture was when we talk about the Denyen, and we had a couple inscriptions we went through for the Egyptian. We talk about the Denyen, they were called the Danuna, or the Denyen, who are in their isles. In other words, in their islands. They were associated with the sea. So I went through last time all these archaeological finds in Anatolia, but they were on land. So I left everyone with the question, where are the ships the Egyptians are talking about? Where are these islands? And that's where I'm going to get to tonight. So I'm going to give you a little bit better map to take a look at to get us started. So this gives you the region of the Mediterranean. And so what I'm going to do, I just want everyone to kind of familiarize yourself. If you don't know the Mediterranean map as well, I'd like everyone to feel comfortable with where I'm getting. But what I want to do is come over here to modern Turkey. We're going to zoom in where that purple box is. Okay, so you see this purple box, and the next slide is going to be just what you see within that purple box. Okay, so this is that same purple box. These X's point out the archaeological finds that I discussed in the last lecture, and I'm not going to go through them again tonight, other than the basics you need. So if you want to know more about these archaeological finds, just check out my last lecture. But let's jump right in here to the new material. And what I want you to look at is right here in this yellow box. So I hope everyone saw this yellow box just pop up. Now, I want to zoom in on this yellow box. We're going to do some more zooming. So let's go to you'll see another map pop up. So now you see this yellow box is just a zoomed in version of what you see right here. And now if you look within this blue box, you see this yellow arrow. And that yellow arrow is pointing to an island. And this island is the focus of our talk for the evening. So let's zoom in one more time. So now we're going to zoom into this blue box. And there you go. So you see here on the right-hand corner, we have Dana Adasi. Now what that means is, drum roll please, this is Dana Island. Okay, So that name should immediately be interesting to you. I want to show you one other thing. Notice my little arrows here. This island is halfway between these two westernmost archaeological finds that named the Danunim people and where the kings are claiming descent from Mopsus, this Greek character. All right, so this is interesting stuff. So what we're going to now do is move into taking a very close look at this Dana Island. Now, 5 years ago, I couldn't have given this lecture. In fact, this material I'm covering really was published more in 2017 to 2020. But in 2016, there was a major shipyard discovered on Dana Island. In fact, it's been claimed to be the biggest ancient shipyard ever excavated. Okay, this is a big, big shipyard on this tiny, tiny little island off the southern coast of Turkey. All right, so what's the big deal? This shipyard has 270, really a little bit more, 270 plus slipways. What does that mean? Well, that means that 270 ships could be built at the same time, or 270 ships could be maintained and ready to sell. So actually it's not so different today, but if you're going to be selling a ship, it needs to be maintained and ready to go, and you have a place to put it so it can get into the water. So this isn't launching 5 ships or 10 ships. This island could have launched 270 ships at the same time. That's a wow. All right. Now the peak of this activity was at 1200 BCE or so, or as it's been dated. So for those of you who are Bronze Age collapse fans, when I said 1200 BCE, right, that should ring a bell. Wow, 1200 BCE. Okay, so perfectly matched with our Bronze Age collapse dating. How convenient, right? Now, why Dana Island? What's special about Dana Island? It's just a perfect location. Okay, so as I showed you, I'm not going to go back to the map, but as I showed you, it's this tiny little island off the coast of Turkey. In the area right on the coast of Turkey, there's plenty of wood. And of course, back then, wood was a crucial resource for building ships. So they had all the wood they needed just right across that tiny little bit of water. But being on an island was better for defensive purposes. In fact, not only do you have this island, but it's got this mountain. You can see here by the top of the picture how it's this great mountain. So it's an easily defendable island, and you're way up high, so you can see someone coming from far away. Not only that, but if you are in a difficult situation and you do run out of supplies, well, you know what? You're close to land. You can get more supplies. You can not just wood. You can get food. You can get weapons. You can bring people. It's and on top of all that, if that wasn't convenient as enough, the way the beach is developed, and this drawing, I'm trying to show you this, but the way the beach is developed, you have all these natural slipways. You can easily pull ships on and off, and here's a overhead picture of these slipways. If you can see this indentation right here, that gives you what the slipways really looked like in real life. All right. Any substantial naval operation from Anatolia would have to involve Dana Island, right? To have something this massive, be able to launch so many ships at once. If you've got a major operation from Anatolia, you're going to be involved with this island. And so those of you who wanted to know about the Danunim, who were in their isles, here's a critical isle for you right here. All right, so now this is an image we've seen in a couple previous lectures, and it's coming back because I now want to take a closer look at these ships. Now, if you want to know all about these battles, this is from the Battle of the Nile of Ramses III. I do talk about it in detail in this lecture, Z09. I'm not going to go through the battle tonight, but I want to take a close look at the ships, because if these were the Denyen and they all sailed from this massive troop transports from the Aegean, then you would have to think, did the ships of the sea people launch from Dana Island? So now what I want to do is just take a quick look at the map, just to make sure everyone's with me here. Our theory is that the Denyen and their allies left here from Dana Island, sailed around Cyprus, and came here to the Nile for a great battle of the Nile. And you have to see, too, the proximity of the shipyard would really make a lot of sense for the sea people to sail from here into Egypt for the Battle of the Nile. All right, now let me get rid of the map. And now what I want to do is refresh your memory from a couple lectures ago. A couple lectures ago, we talked about the mythological king Danos and how he was from the Levant, and fleeing his brother Aegyptus, he sails across the Mediterranean. He lands in Argos, and he ends up settling in Argos, and his descendants become the king of the Argives. The kings of Argos are the descendants of Danos. He brought know-how to the Greeks, or at least he's giving credit for bringing special know-how to the Greeks. One is he was credited with bringing the Pentaconter, which means that he's credited with bringing the shipbuilding technology to the Greeks. He also was credited with the alphabet. There's more. Let's just stick with the ships for tonight. Now, remember, guy grows up in the Levant, sails to Greece to bring know-how of shipbuilding. And now I want to take a little close up here of one of the ships in this drawing and point out a couple things for you. This right here is one of the ships, one of the troop transports of the Sea People. And there's a couple details I'd like to point out. One is, if you see this like brailled rig, this loose-fitting sail here, that is not Greek technology. That's actually Syro-Canaanite technology. So this is Levantine technology. Oh, and there's a crow's nest. Where's the crow's nest from? Not from Greece. It's, again, from the Syro-Canaanite technology. So what does that mean? We have a Greek ship with clear technological innovations from the Levant, and it's the first time in any inscriptions we've seen this technology on Greek ships. So this ship alone is a wonderful example of this merged idea of know-how from the Levant coming into the shipbuilding of Greece. Am I saying that this King Danos brought it? No, but it's certainly an interesting clue. Okay, let's get back to the island itself. I'll move away from the ships and talk about the island again. This slide, I'll say, is really more for the fun of it, but I couldn't not show it to you. This is a view of the coast again, and I want you to see here, this is like from the side of the island. So you can see you have the slipways down here, and what the archaeologists have found is that they had workshops just up from the slipways, and then of course on the higher part of the mountain you can have defenses. So, and then here's an overhead view of those slipways and the workshops here. Pretty cool, huh? And this view right here is giving you what it looks like to a ship as it's approaching these slipways. And you can see that they built out these slipways on this 3D imaging to make you see what it really would feel like. Okay, so if Dana Island is home to the Danunim, and that's where their ships were built and maintained, and it's this huge, huge shipyard, 270 plus slipways. Why is there no record of this place outside of Egypt? And now I'm about to tell you that there is, very much so. Let's talk about the Assyrians. The Assyrians, I cannot possibly do them justice in a couple minutes. They really deserve their own series, and I think one day I will do a series for them. They have so many ties to Jewish history, biblical history. They really deserve their own time. But I'm going to try to just get everyone on the same page real quickly. As the key points being, the Neo-Assyrian Empire is dated to about 900 to 600 BCE. They began in northern Iraq, and you may want to look at this map while I'm talking. So the Assyrians, their name comes from Ashur. So there's If you look here, Assur, and then Nineveh was a later capital. So just know that this is kind of where they started, and they branched out. They went south, right? They went east, and they went really far west, including Egypt. They, at their peak in the mid-600s BCE, they were the largest empire ever, including the countries, modern countries of Iraq, Iran, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, parts of Turkey, Cyprus, parts of Armenia, and a chunk of Saudi Arabia as well. This was a big, big political entity at its peak. There are many, many biblical references, as I said, and they were the ones that destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. So after King David and King Solomon, the monarchy would split, and you'd have a northern kingdom of Israel and a southern kingdom of Judah, and the kingdom of Israel was the bigger one, and that one was actually wiped off the map from the Assyrians, and that's where you get these lost tribes of Israel. That was after the Assyrians pushed them out. The Assyrians, though they didn't do Jews a favor back then, they're going to help us a little bit tonight. So let's see what the Assyrians could tell us. The Assyrians left us a few inscriptions, and I want to take a closer look at them. They're going to help us with our investigation here of this Dana Island. Are they also aware of Dana Island? Are they also aware of this Adana region? How does it connect to what the Egyptians said? So let's look at these first couple inscriptions. The first one, and I'm just going to read the bold. You can pause the video and watch and read the whole thing if you like. But so this one is from Sargon II, but the shuriken is really saying the fortress of Sargon, which means the legitimate king, which would tell you he may not have been the legitimate king if he calls himself a legitimate king. But that's a story for another time. Okay, so let's see what Sargon left us. And 7 kings of Ea, a district of Adana, whose distant abodes are situated a 7 days' journey in the sea of the setting sun. What did I just say? There's multiple kings of a district called Adana that's associated with the sea, and specifically it's saying the western sea, right? The sea of the setting sun is west to the Assyrians, so that's the Mediterranean. Okay, so we have 7 kings associated with the Mediterranean Sea in a district called Adana. Let's see what Esarhaddon has for us. All the kings from the islands amidst the sea and from the country of Adana as far as Tarsisi. Now, the modern translation says Cyprus. I'm going to get to this in 1 second. But what I want you to see is, again, we have all these kings that are amidst the sea, right? And they're associated with this country, Adana. Now, what's the deal with this Adana? Why is it translated as Cyprus, right? Didn't I just tell you guys it was in Adana, in the southeastern corner of Turkey, and now we're talking about Cyprus? What's going on here? So does Adana mean Cyprus or Adana? For that, we're going to take a quick little etymology detour, or wouldn't even call it a detour. We're going to take a quick little etymology investigation. Those of you who've seen a lot of my videos know I try to do etymology a lot, although I haven't been doing a great job of the last few lectures, but I'm going to get back into it. Tonight we got etymology, and I'm going to do a bunch of it in the next lecture. Let's take a look at Adana. So Adana is Akkadian and is translated for Cyprus. By the way, it's not a spelling mistake. Sometimes it has that extra A between the D and the N, and sometimes it doesn't. I'm just pulling the way my sources are spelling it. I'm not making a claim of which way is better. All right, so anyway, Adana is Akkadian for Cyprus. And that's what we always think. Now, let me look at one more inscription before we get into the answers here. This is another one from Esarhaddon, and this is from Prism B. Now, Prism B is really famous, and that's because it talks about Manasseh, king of Judah. All right, so it's huge for those of you who are into biblical archaeology, myself included. But I don't want to get into that as tonight, other than just identify that it's the same Prism. What I want to do is talk about this sentence towards the bottom. 10 kings from Adana amidst the sea. Okay, so 10 kings from Cyprus amidst the sea. What this is, if you look at the top, there's 12 kings listed from the region of Hatti for the Hittite area, and these are kind of your Levantine kings, including the king of Judah. And then at the bottom, we have 10 kings from amidst the sea, and they tell us 22 kings total. So what are these 10 kings from amidst the sea? What does, let's put this together and see what we came up with. Let's get back to our etymology. So in Hebrew, an isle or an island is E, okay? And Egyptian, it's a very similar word. Luckily, there's no ancient Egyptians to correct me, but we're going to assume that the way they pronounce it is very close to E as well, okay? Well, the Assyrians, this tells you how land-based they are, right? Talk about a landlocked people. They had no word for islands, right? So now what they did recognize, though, is you have these Danunim people from Adana, and we have Dana Island, right? So the Danunim and the islands off the coast of Adana were merged with the only word for an island that the Assyrians would know, and that's E, which they would just take from any other Semitic, or in this case, Egyptian. And if you take Isle of the Denyen to the Egyptians, or Isle of the Danunim to the Phoenicians, if the Assyrians don't have Isle, they don't really know what they're saying, right? It's just like Adana is the island of Adana. So this got merged into one word, or at least that's the theory. And when it got merged into one word, it became Adana for the islands of Adana. Now, I owe you a little bit more information because, great, Seth, you just showed me how they made a mistake. But why did it stick? Why is it that a couple hundred years after the Assyrians are entering Anatolia, they're using this term? The Assyrians first went west in the 850s and hit Cilicia around that time. Cilicia and Adana I'm using interchangeably. They're not technically interchangeably. Adana is the heart of Cilicia, but whether I say Adana or Cilicia, I'm saying the southeastern corner of Anatolia. Right? Now, the Danunim were already in Cilicia, and if you don't believe me, then check out my last lecture. It proves to you the Danunim were in Cilicia, and they were called as such from the earliest days of the Assyrians' invasion into Anatolia. So because the Assyrians first came to the Danunim were the shipbuilders. They had Dana Island. They had Tarsus, which I'll get to in just a bit. And not only that, the Assyrians did not distinguish between an island and a promontory. Okay, so let me show you this map real fast. What I mean is we have Dana Island. Dana Island is right there in that corner. But all these promontories as well, to the Assyrians, they would look at them the same way they do islands, like that they really wouldn't distinguish. And up through history, we've had plenty of not so nice people operating out of these promontories in Anatolia, and I'm going to get to that a little bit more tonight. But for now, I just want you to realize, okay, the Assyrians enter Adana. These people from here to here are the ship experts like the Assyrians hadn't dealt with before. You have this major shipbuilding center here. You have the main port of Adana over here. And you have all these promontories in this major island, and it kind of gets merged in their head, and this became Adana. All right. Now the name just stuck after that. So yes, later on the Assyrians would become much better educated about what's out there. But the theory is, it's not my theory, others have said it, that they just kind of took Adana to mean these islands and these in the sea in general, and the name stuck. Okay, let me get rid of our map here. And I want to give you one more point before I leave this slide, and we're going to come back to it. But that's this interesting clue. If you look at these 10 kings that are listed in these inscriptions, these 10 kings from Cyprus or Adana, 7 of the 10 kings have Greek names. I'm not going to give you any more on that right now, but no, that's going to be a very important clue for later. So what do we know about the Cilicia region? Adana, of course, being the heart, as I said. So Cilicia is this key location, all right? And I want to emphasize how powerful their location was. In modern terms, it's the meeting point of Syria and Turkey. It's major trade outside of the current issues in Syria, but it was a major trading point in modern terms, and it was a major trading point in ancient terms. You have the Mediterranean Sea, so you have what's now Syria, what's now Turkey, coming together with the Mediterranean Sea all in the same little corner. That's not enough. You have the Taurus Mountains just north of Adana, leading you ever heard of Cilician gates, which is for those of you into antiquity, for sure you've read that term before. Well, the gates lead you into Adana. So all these minerals from the Taurus Mountains are coming into Adana. There's 5 rivers that run through Cilicia, including the Saras River. The Saras River is significant because it's the longest river in Turkey that connects to the Mediterranean. And if all that wasn't enough for you, it's the closest mainland to the island of Cyprus. So for all these reasons, Cilicia is a key location in antiquity, and it's a key place today. Now, let's take a quick little detour. I want to talk about Pompey the Great. Now, what does Pompey the Great have to do with our discussion tonight? You'll see. I do have a connection, but also I just thought it was time to talk about something else to take a little bit of a break. Okay, so Pompey the Great is one of Rome's greatest generals. He was at first an ally and then a rival to Julius Caesar. And he gives us a special connection both to Cilicia and to the Jews. And what we're going to do is look at his war against the Cilician pirates. So the Cilician pirates were a problem for centuries for Rome. And where did they hang out? Those very same promontories and islands as well off the coast of Anatolia. And they were heavily involved in the slave trade. And it seems that Rome was happy with them for a while because they were helping to bring slaves into Rome, and Rome loved its slaves. But eventually the pirates got bolder, their numbers were growing, and they became more harmful to Roman commerce in general. Now, Rome had a weak point. Their Achilles heel, if I can use a Trojan term, is Egypt, because Egypt was the breadbasket of Rome. And even in the city of Rome, how they kept the masses happy is they gave out free grain. Okay? And the stability of Rome was dependent on this grain supply of Egypt. So anything that risked the grain supply of Egypt is going to get the Roman Senate all up in arms. And wouldn't you know it, the pirates, these Cilician pirates off the southeastern coast of Anatolia, started interfering with Rome's grain supply. So Pompey the Great was sent in to take care of it, and take care of it he did. He divided the Mediterranean Sea up into different quadrants, different parts, and then he methodically went through each of those parts and removed the pirates, every bit of them, slaughtered, who knows, some sources say, 20,000, whatever, you can pick whatever you want. He then took the ones that he didn't kill and shipped them off to different areas to be settled, but he did effectively end the pirate threat. Afterwards, Pompey the Great sets up his base of operations in Cilicia, and he controls and consolidates the entire region. Now, long-term, Cilicia is set up as a Roman province. All right, so Cilicia is now a Roman province, and Tarsus, which is Tarsus right here, becomes the capital. I told you we were going to talk a little bit about Tarsus, and we got more on Tarsus coming. So Tarsus is named the capital. Cilicia is now a Roman province, and a few years later, Cyprus is added to this province. Now, this is very important for our discussion. Maybe not directly, but it's an important piece of evidence, because I said before that Cyprus was part of this body, these islands, these promontories in the southeastern corner of Anatolia, and the Assyrians brought all this together and called it Adana or Adana. Now we see Rome 600, 700 years later, Rome is repeating. So Rome is taking the southeastern corner of Anatolia, and they're adding Cyprus to it, and they're calling this whole region Cilicia, with Cyprus included too. So it's important evidence because it's showing us that you have these two big empires, and they both consider Cyprus part of this southeastern corner of Anatolia. Okay, now what I want to do is talk about Pompey's Jewish connection. I told you he had a Cilician connection, he had a Jewish connection I want to get to. So I just want you to look at this map and see where Jerusalem is. Notice, if you just go down the coast, here's Tarsus. If you head down the coast, you're going to run right into Judea or Judah, and then you're going to come into Egypt. That's important. So just remember that if you're going by land, this is the way you're going. Okay, now let's look at another slide. Pompey invaded Syria and Judea in the years 64, 63 BCE. Why did he do it? Well, he was spurred on by a threat to the Egyptian grain supply. How shocking, right? You have similar instability in both places at the time. You had civil wars, frequent regime changes, general lack of stability that made Rome fearful of their grain supply. So first Pompey went into Syria, and he took the Lebanese coast, and he made this part of Rome. Now, Judea was handled a little differently. He did not immediately invade Judea. And the Judea, by the way, if you know the Hanukkah story, Judea was still ruled by the Maccabee family, right? The Hasmoneans, the real name was the Hasmoneans. So the Maccabees of Hanukkah fame still ruled Judea, but the quality of leadership had diminished quite a bit from the Hasmonean prime. And you have two brothers, Aristobulus and Hyrcanus, who are fighting it out for control of Judea. And they decide they're going to bribe Pompey. And Pompey's really playing off both brothers, just, I guess, collecting the bribes. Pompey was definitely in this to get rich as well. He wanted the wealth of Jerusalem. He knew about the temple in Jerusalem. And he just needed to play these guys off until one of the two brothers were stupid enough to let him in. And what do you know? Hyrcanus just let him right in. Now, the Jews still fought back, and they were able to set up fortifications, and there was this big siege until Pompey used the Sabbath. He was there long enough to know that Jews did not prioritize fighting or defense on the Sabbath, on Shabbat, and so he used that as his opening to finish off the Jews, and we're told 12,000 Jews were slain, and the treasure was robbed. The sources are a little bit more fuzzy on that. But there are some long-term ramifications I'd like to share before we move on. So Jewish independence ends, and I mean really ends long-term. So the Romans and the Byzantines ruled Judea. Now, there's a couple short breaks, but they basically ruled Judea for almost 700 years. Okay, so into the 600s of the Common Era, Judea remained a part or a vassal of the Romans and the Byzantines. By the way, it wasn't like the Jews would get their own country in 600 BC. They'd have 600 CE, they'd have a much longer wait. Jewish independence was not regained until 1948 of our era. In other words, a little over 70 years ago. Let's look at the long-term ramifications. From 63 BCE all the way to 1948 of our era, right? Just over 2,000 years, there was no Jewish independence in Judea. That's why it was such a big deal a little over 70 years ago when Israel became a state. In the short term, I'm going to take us back to antiquity here. Hyrcanus is named as the high priest, but more interesting than that is his top advisor. So his top advisor is a guy by the name of Antipater the Edomean. That just means he's an Edomite from Edom, okay? So Antipater is Hyrcanus's top advisor, and Antipater has a much more famous son. His son is Herod the Great, but that's a story for another time. Okay, so I've been on a long detour. What's the point of my detour? Number one, we had a painful memory for the Jewish people. Okay, well, what's that to do with our lecture? Probably not a lot, but at least we learned something, or at least I hope we learned something. And this is world history by a Jew, so I have to fit in a little bit. But number two, and really relevant to our discussion, is this. Now we see this history and hundreds of years of history now of these two empires, both making Cyprus part of Cilicia, which helps to answer the question is how Adana could include the area of Dana, could include the Cyprus and all these little islands in the area. Well, it starts making a lot more sense when you see what the Romans and the Assyrians themselves thought of this particular area. Okay, but to summarize here, I want to move back to a slide you already saw. Okay, we have two very important points that I owe you. All right, now point number one was this thing about the 7 of the 10 kings being listed here are Greeks. Okay, I'll give you a hint. That's going to be the Synopsis connection, but that's not next. Next, I want to talk about this one little line that I just briefed right over before, and that's this Tarsisi. All the kings from the islands amidst the sea, from the country of Adana, as far as Tarsisi. Now, what is that? Tarsisi is the Assyrians' name for Tarsus in Adana. And Tarsus was not just some little city. This was the port of the Adana region. Now, at this point, you have seen how active the Danunim are in ships, in sailing, and their main port, yes, their shipyard is Dana Island, but their main port was right here at Tarsus. Tarsus has a long history in and of itself. Long before the Assyrians were there, you had the Hittites. The Hittites called it Tarsa. So originally it was Tarsa. The Assyrians called it Tarsisi, but after the Assyrian takeover, they would rename it Tarsos. Why did they rename it Tarsos? Well, because they were actually trying to connect with the Greek population. The Syrians knew there was a large Greek population, and they gave it this Greekified, if I can use that, this Greekified name. We know later on Tarsus would become the Roman capital of Cilicia when it was a Roman province. It's also where Mark Antony and Cleopatra met. And I know that I have a lot of Christians in my audience. So let me also mention this is where Paul the Apostle was born. He was born in Tarsus, although he grew up in Jerusalem. So we have a lot to talk about still. And so next time we're going to come back and focus on Tarsus. Why? Because the question is, and it's one of these long biblical mysteries, is Tarsus the same as biblical Tarshish? Tarshish of the story of Jonah. Tarshish from the Psalm for Monday. I'll cover that if you don't know what I'm talking about. And also Solomon's Tarshish ships. Is this it? Is this the same place? Come back next time and we'll cover that. I should have that one up in just a few days. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to know more, feel free to get my weekly email. All you got to do is drop me an email on historybyjew@gmail.com. And if you want to help this channel, I'm not asking for money. I just ask you to like the video and share it with your friends. Thanks a lot and have a great evening.